Wake up, wake up. Monday, April 29th, and the draft has happened. We now have not only a 2024 draft class, we've got an impressive list of undrafted free agents to talk about, and you're in the right place to do it all. 49ers fans, welcome. Damon Bruce, Larry Kruger, like and subscribe. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. Good morning, man. What a weekend. Perfect weather. Niners have a great, I thought, a phenomenal draft. And, here we go. May is upon us. We're officially in the dead season going into training camp. Things won't really get cooking until July, but we'll have a couple mini camps between now and then to look at this roster. But overall, I think it was a very successful weekend for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. We won't know for a while, but to me, it looks pretty good.
I would agree with you. I mean, a lot of the things that they did made sense. A few incomplete grades to maybe address some issues on the team, but we'll see what these guys actually turn into and what positions they end up in. And this is across the offensive line. I think that they got some offensive line versatility. They might not have added the star power a lot of people craved, but versatility and depth, I think, were addressed just about everywhere you looked. And Larry, what's going to make this, I think, really interesting is we're evaluating this draft class two different ways, aren't we? There's the normal draft class evaluation, which means you really don't know what you got in any of these guys until 2-3 years down the road. You know, being patient with the development of especially, later drafted players, undrafted free agents, what they turn into and what they are now might be two totally different things. So there's the normal way to evaluate what they just did. And then there's the unique situation that the 49ers find themselves in, where they are desperate to win the Super Bowl this year as constructed. And how many of these picks will help them do just that? And it's kind of where the rub of this whole draft is, isn't it? Don't you think? Who is a project that is really going to develop to help this team long-term, and who can help them right now?
It's funny. It's like, we got this one here. This draft was ass, and all I would say is, what do you know about it? I mean, seriously, what do you know about it? As far as, did you know any of the guys who were in the draft? What percentage of them did you actually know going into the proceedings? Most people don't even know 30% of the players. So you're going to sit there and say it was a bad draft when you really don't know the players. I mean, that's just because some content creator said it was a bad draft, or some writer gave him a bad grade, or you did a bunch of mocks and you thought that this receiver should have gone instead of that receiver. I mean, it's amazing. People watch every down of Niners and then are like, oh, I know it like the back of my hand. But they don't watch any college football. So for 90% of the people out there, these guys are like hatched out of an egg on draft day. And then it's just like, what are they? And if you didn't spend any time watching college football, then you really don't know what you're talking about, right? Because you never watch these guys.
Well, and
how many of the receivers did you actually watch as opposed to just looking at people's mock drafts?
Hey, even if you did. Like, I watched college football enough to know that Reggie Bush was one of the single greatest college football players I've ever seen with my own two eyes, period, end of story. And in the pros, he sucked.
Yeah, I mean, there's that too. That you never know how guys will transition.
Yeah, I don't.
But I mean, if your premise is that you don't, if your premise, if everything's based on your premise and your premise is wrong, your conclusion's wrong. So if your premise was that Ricky Pearsall was not a top tier player, well, then your conclusion's wrong that the draft was ass, because then you're like, well, he wasn't a very good player. He's a very good player. And he's not a guy who's going to be, your future starting X receiver. He's much more of a complementary type player, but he's a very good high level complementary player that should help him win games right away and should immediately step in and contribute right away. Where if you drafted a receiver that has maybe a little bit more upside, but he may have a warm-up curve like most receivers do, where he's not really going to be good for another year and a half And they don't have that time to waste. So some of their picks, because if you looked at their picks, there were several guys who were fifth year seniors, 6-year seniors.
I like that.
Players in college football that have been granted the extra year of eligibility due to the pandemic. Many of those players took that opportunity. So they took a much more mature group of players overall. That's one. And they took some players that are going to be contributors right away, even though they may never be the number one receiver on the team. So I don't know.
I don't like anybody talking about the draft with full confidence and absolute authority, because if there's one thing that's proven time and time again is that NFL general managers have absolutely no clue either. So if the general manager and his opinion can be wrong, whatever fan is watching or complaining or trying to overly praise a draft pick is just as wrong. The careers that these guys have will bear out who they actually are and what this draft class was. You can only look at it in terms of, what do they got? Do I like the talent? Do I think it fits? And I think that in a lot of these instances, the talent that the 49ers brought in fits what they need long-term and right now. So, it's hard to serve just one master in a draft class, much less two. I'm not saying that the Niners are on some two timeline thing like the Warriors were trying to pull off, but they really have the pressure of adding guys who can get snaps this year, and also adding the guys who will be foundational pieces of future teams going forward when Brock Purdy's new salary is going to re-jump, the entire construction of this team and how they do it. I thought it was interesting. I mean, I always think drafts are interesting. You kind of get your first peek into how these teams sort of see themselves. Like, this is the first real evaluation of their own team and in areas that they think that they need to improve on. And then they'll also tell you, well, no, that's not it. We're just looking for best available player, and our own needs are not even factored in. Some teams go about that way. I think everybody's trying to, hit the ball right down in the middle of the fairway. So only time will tell. Ricky Pearsall is a guy who I think was under-discussed. And when a player's name is under-discussed and it happens in the first round, everybody's reaction is, well, I didn't expect that. And things that I'm not expecting by definition can't be good for the team, and I think
right.
that's where a lot of people come from. So,
but a lot of people aren't watching college football. So, just ask yourself this. If you're sitting there with a super strong, well-developed opinion today, what's your opinion based on?
Right.
Is it based on you didn't like a highlight? Is it based on somebody gave them a low grade in a mock draft? What's your opinion based on? And it's probably not based on a whole lot. All I would say about Pearsall is that I preferred other receivers as well, because I was thinking more along the lines of getting somebody to replace Brandon Ayuk, get somebody to replace Deebo Samuel, get a boundary X receiver who's, got size and speed and is going to replace Ayuk, because the talk was they were going to trade Ayuk. And then there was the talk on Friday they were going to trade Deebo. None of it materialized. If you have Ayuk and you have Deebo, and we talked about this last week, the receiver position, more than the other positions on the field, needs to complement one another. They need to complement. You can't have 5 go pattern guys. You can't have 5 guys who operate in the short and intermediate middle of the field. You have to have guys who complement one another. Well, if Ayuk is coming back, and it seems that he is, if Deebo is coming back, and it's pretty clear that it sounds like he is, then you need receivers that complement those guys, not replace them. And that's what Ricky Pearsall does. He's very quick. I mean, people that were saying he was a bad athlete, the guy's got 42-inch vertical and runs 4.41. That's not a bad athlete. That's a very good athlete. 4.41's a great time. And 42.5-inch vert is a monster vert. So this guy's a really good athlete. He's very quick in a short area. He knows how to get open. He's going to, work out of the slot. He's not going to, he's going to operate in that short and intermediate middle. And as Brock Purdy breaks contain and extends the play and moves right outside the pocket, you're going to be thrilled that he has Ricky Pearsall, because Pearsall is the kind of guy that works back to the quarterback, frees himself up, gets to the open spot, and is going to be there for Purdy to complete passes to. So he's a continuity piece
this year.
We are going to see him this year. We're going to see him a lot this year. But I mean, as far as, he's a continuity piece. He's a piece of the puzzle that keeps you on the field, and other teams are going to hate him, and they're going to hate Purdy, because it's going to be like, oh, we got this team defense. We shut down Ayuk. We shut down the run. We shut down Debo. We shut down Kittle. Oh, crap. And now Purdy moved 10 feet to his left and found this guy in the middle of the field for a first down. So,
hey, they don't run.
That's what he is.
Look, they don't run 4 wide receiver sets, and he hasn't beat out Juwan Jennings yet. So what Ricky Pearsall means to this year, we'll find out when the year gets here. I think for him to get significant playing time, there's an injury somewhere, and injuries are always right around the corner. But I also know that Kyle doesn't look or trust a single rookie receiver he ever has.
But this guy's different. This guy's different. This guy's polished.
We'll see.
This guy's a polished receiver. This guy's been, this guy knows how to run routes. He's not out there swerving around. Like I heard somebody say that about Franklin, the receiver from Oregon. He's out there kind of swerving around. In other words, he doesn't make sharp cuts. He doesn't run precise routes.
It's like the Bay Bridge S curve.
This guy runs precise routes. This guy's got really good hands. This guy's got really good ball skills. I'll say this. If Ricky Pearsall does not contribute significantly this year, then you could come out and make your argument that it was a bad draft choice, because part of his value proposition is that he's going to help right away. So if he doesn't help right away, that would not be a good thing.
What'd you think of Jacob Counting, the second wide receiver that they took out of Arizona, who, again, it's got an awful lot of collegiate production, the kind of collegiate production that makes you say, well, why didn't he go higher in this draft?
I love this pick. This guy runs 4.38. He's super quick, super fast, but he's very precise and very tough. Started at UTEP, transferred to Arizona. He's tough. He's a tough, fast little receiver, but he's not small. He's small, but he's not. He doesn't play small. He's 5'8". He's really, really strong, and he's very, very precise in his route running. And Lynch said that there was a corner that they brought in from the Pac-12 who was like, man, that was the toughest cover I had all year. I think Cowing is a really interesting player because he gives them an element they don't have. I mean, he's Danny Gray, but with toughness and production and unbelievable speed. I mean, this is going to be, I think that's going to be another player that, I'm not sure how he gets in there. Maybe he's a return guy at first, but I think Cowing's got a chance to really be good.
I think that the Isaac Guerendo pick is an interesting one, Larry. Kyle loves his weapon X's. He loves a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He really is a little bit of everything. They also come back in their undrafted free agent additions, and we'll get to who Cody Schrader might be for them in just a little bit. But look, Isaac Guerendo was a player that you talked about an awful lot leading up to this draft. There were two running backs that you like: Cowan out of Blake Corum out of Ann Arbor, and Isaac Guerendo, who really, the more of a look at him, you can't help but think a little bit of a Christian McCaffrey 2.0, Christian McCaffrey light. He is a running back who might be just as good, if not better, catching the ball out of the backfield. You could almost line him up in the slot. And that is a guy who's another burner, third fastest time at the combine. So very interesting chess piece for Kyle to figure out how, if he wants to use him. Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville.
They had Kev was telling me that like in the history of the combine or something like that, or in the recent history, the only guy who weighed over 220 pounds who ran 4.31 is what I think he ran, was DK Metcalf. So he's in elite territory or category there. I mean, Guerendo's interesting from the standpoint of he ran that great 40 time, but he really doesn't show that 40 speed all the time. So it's like he it's kind of like Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis ran 4.37 or 4.38, but he didn't really play that fast. He was more of a dominant inline blocker who, made some big plays, but he rarely got to demonstrate that 4.37 speed with the 49ers. But he was a good player. He just wasn't the burner down the seam. I mean, he made some big plays, and occasionally he would show it, but not always. And Guerendo's kind of like that to me. If you watched him, he never was the starting back anywhere he was. But what's intriguing to me is that he's 228 pounds or whatever he is. He does run that fast. And I think there's a chance that he could be a fullback. Now, he played wide receiver, but he's not going to play wide receiver. He's going to be, he might be a receiving running back, but I think that the more interesting angle on him is, what if he could be the Juice replacement? What if you could replace Juice with a guy who has 4.3 speed? What if you threw it out in the 2-back set to the fullback in the flat and it's Guerendo and he makes one guy miss and then races down the sidelines? That kind of 4.3 speed could give you an element at fullback that you've never, ever had before, that nobody's ever had before, and could just give the Niners another eligible receiver who's super dangerous. So I'm not sure where he fits in. He's not an awesome pick and slide running back. He's more of a trap runner, like open a hole, hand this guy the ball, and let him fire out of a cannon. And I think that's how you're going to see that 4.3 speed. But he's interesting. It's like you don't see big guys with that kind of speed. Tony Pauline, had that report before the draft. The Niners are going to go for Guerendo in round 3. And then, like, the next day, he took it down. And I think you and I discussed it. It's like, well, taking it down, does that mean that he doesn't think the Niners like Guerendo? Or did he just, maybe gets called from the Niners and said, don't put our stuff out there for everybody to see? I don't know, but it's like, to me, it's not the kind of thing that you take back. And sure enough, he was right? The Niners had interest in Guerendo, and they took him in the 4th. So I like Guerendo, but all I would say to everybody who's like, expecting him to be this burner guy, I don't see that speed out there. You see some explosiveness for sure, and he's very, very athletic. And it's rare to see somebody with that kind of straight line speed at that size. But I still think they're going to have to kind of figure out what he is.
Yeah, he's one of the.
I don't think he's a running back per se. He's not.
Can he help you now? Is it all in the future? Is what will
might be a fullback
2024 season and beyond? It's going to be fascinating. Robert Prado says, "I'll take the Super Guerendo with cheese." It does sound like a food item. It absolutely does. Look, we got some.
I'd rather get a guy who runs 4.3 than not have a guy that runs 4.3.
Right.
To say that.
We got some interesting undrafted free agents to talk about. They bring in Terrell Owens' kid. We can talk about that. That's where they go ahead and they fill a need at tight end with an undrafted kid out of Furman, Mason Pline,
who I've been talking about for 2 months. That was one of my sleepers in my deep sleeper draft video. And
nice.
Pline is it doesn't bother me that.
By the way, as a content creator, when the Niner picks your deep sleeper pick, isn't that a feel good? Doesn't make you go like, oh yeah.
Oh, I pumped my fist when I saw the name on the Niners Nation on their undrafted draft tracker.
Larry, do you have a good weekend? Hell yeah, I did.
Oh, I mean, this guy is, and I don't know how I stumbled on him. I really don't. I think I was watching some video.
Furman tape? A lot of Furman tape in your house right now.
No, but I think I was, there's 4 or 5 guys that I think are really, really sharp on the draft. Obviously, Kuiper and Jeremiah, Matt Miller. There's a guy named Josh Norris. There's a bunch of guys out there that are pretty sharp, and Pauline. And I think in one of their podcasts, they had mentioned Mason Pline. And so then I started doing the deep dive on Mason Pline. And a lot of Niner fans were upset that the Niners did not draft a tight end. But I'm not, because this guy is unfreaking believable. He's a 6'8" guy who played basketball and baseball as well as football at Ferris State. And then when I stumbled onto his basketball tape, And he's a 6'7" guy, but he's rising up like he's Aaron Gordon. I mean, he's hanging in the air. He's reverse jamming. He's catching lobs and throwing them down. And so right there, I'm like, the athleticism box is checked. If you can reverse jam, and run the break in basketball and rise up in a crowd and throw it down, you're plenty athlete enough for the NFL tight end position. So then it was about, well, is he productive as a tight end? And he was actually pretty productive. Then I start reading his bio. The guy's a mechanical engineering major. So, I mean, anybody who knows anything about mechanical engineering knows that means he's super smart. He had like a 4.0 GPA and he has 10.5-inch hands. So, I mean, to me, I'll take a chance on the converted basketball player with 10.5-inch hands who's got good college production and is a mechanical engineering major, especially in this Shanahan offense where you really need to be smart at fullback and at what
do you think the slide to undrafted was then?
At tight end. Well, just because he went to Furman. I mean, the guy's from Furman. He's the level of competition that he played at is nothing compared to the NFL.
Right.
And just, I don't know how deep everybody went into the factors. I mean, I saw a couple people who sung his praises, didn't even mention the fact that he was a mechanical engineering major, didn't even mention the fact that he has 10.5-inch hands. So maybe people just don't see the traits that I think are difference maker traits. But I love him as far as I don't know if he's a strong inline blocker. They're going to have to work with him on his strength as an inline blocker. But if you watched him, the effort is there as a blocker and the athleticism is there. And then you mix in, he's almost 6'8", super smart and huge hands. I think he has potential to be not just make the roster. I think he's got potential to be their number 2 tight end. I mean, none of their other tight ends to me have shown me anything.
It's wide open. The competition should be open.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's got a great resume and the position outside of George Kittle is filled by guys that have nothing. I mean, Braden Willis was a gold helmet guy. Other than that, he did nothing last year. Cam Latu was a 3rd-round pick. He did absolutely zero. And when people ask Shanahan this weekend, so is Cam Latu your kind of official backup tight end? He's like, no, he's not, because he hasn't been here at all practicing, and we kind of like to see guys practice. So that was like a shot over the bow, like, hey, Cam Latu, where the hell are you?
It's time to get into camp, or it's time to report.
It's time to show up at the facility, get a little apartment in Santa Clara, and start working on your craft. If you think you're going to show up in training camp and win the job, you may want to think again.
Great to have you here. It is the Monday after the draft. Good to have you on Wake Up, like and subscribe, all of those good things. Saw a new member this morning come into the Initiated. Thank you very, very much for that. And thank you for supporting what Larry and I are doing collectively, independently. We really, really appreciate it. In the back of the draft, undrafted free agents. You're looking for guys who produced on the field. For whatever reason, they didn't measure up well enough at the combine to get themselves drafted in the first 7 rounds. But man, there was something there at least on tape. And when it comes to what did you get on tape in an undrafted free agent, I don't know if any undrafted free agent comes with the kind of tape that Cody Schrader had. And he didn't play at Furman. He played at Missouri. And as soon as he was the pick, or excuse me, he wasn't a pick. As soon as he got the undrafted signing announcement out into the public domain, my boy Tom Ackerman, the sports director at KMOX, whose mother was a golden girl at Mizzou, meaning she was the lead majorette. His family's got a lot of Mizzou ties, even though Tommy went to IU, and that's where we became friends. He's got deep ties at Mizzou. His wife went to Mizzou. He spends several Saturdays every fall either working a Missouri game as a broadcaster, reporting on Missouri, or just going to a game as a fan. He is deep in Missouri football. And as soon as the 49ers signed Corey Schrader, I heard from my boy Ackerman going, "Oh, dude, you just got yourself a football player." Corey Schrader,
Cody.
Excuse me, Cody. Yes. Cody Schrader. All Cody did when he was in college last year was lead the nation in rushing. That guy goes undrafted. I really don't know.
In the SEC.
1,627 rushing yards, a 1,600-yard season with 14 touchdowns on only 276 carries, with 22 catches for 191 yards to go along with it. He is a St. Louis boy. He is a guy who has just literally been underestimated every single day of his life. He started at a small college, worked his way through junior college, worked his way to Missouri, leads the nation in rushing, still underestimated, doesn't get drafted. And my friend Tom Ackerman knows something about what it takes to make it as a professional athlete. And he just says that this kid is absolutely wired like you would want your first round draft pick to be wired, much less an undrafted kid. So I'm pretty excited about Cody Schrader. Again,
you should be.
Does
this kid
need another running back? Maybe it will. Maybe we're getting some assessments on what they really think of Elijah Mitchell and JP Mason, who didn't participate much in last year either. Maybe there was a reason for that. We kept wanting to see more of them. Kyle went out and got himself 2 ain't fucking around running backs. One in the draft, one undrafted.
Yeah, this was a phenomenal undrafted free agent. And Bobby Turner is a longtime running back coach. He was the guy that's, he's developed Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey swears by him. He made Terrell Davis. Not only is Bobby T a great running back coach, but he's got a great eye for running back talent. And so the Niners keep finding guys after the draft. Elijah Mitchell, late round. JP Mason after the draft. And I think JP Mason has a ton of talent, but this kid Schrader is unbelievable. He was projected to go in the 6th round. He doesn't have great numbers, right? He ran a 4.61 40. He's 5'8", somewhere between 205 and 215. He has a 1.55 10-yard split. But man, when you watch this guy, he went off. And he went off against the best teams that he faced. 29 carries for 128 yards against the Buckeyes. 217 yards rushing against Arkansas. 205 yards rushing against Tennessee, 5.1 yards per carry against Georgia, 8.8 yards a carry versus LSU. And I mean, this guy's unbelievable. First team all SEC, as you said, 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns. He averaged 5.9 a carry in the SEC. Amazing. Only played 2 years at Missouri. He was a walk-on at Truman State, some Division II school. As you said, St. Louis kid, all conference running back and linebacker in high school, wasn't heavily recruited. He was a 0-star recruit. And this guy can really catch the ball. He transferred to Missouri. He improves constantly. He's coachable. He is older, so he is like 24 going on 25. But you're talking about, he ran the outside zone at Missouri, so he's a perfect fit for this offense. And he's just a decisive running back. He plays fast. He's smart. He played great against the best teams on his schedule. He's a really, really good running back. And I don't know why he wasn't drafted. I mean, running backs are always kind of devalued, and he didn't quite have the numbers. But I mean, Jesus. This guy dominated in the SEC. It's not like he dominated at, Villanova or something. And it's like, well, who did they play? He dominated in the SEC against the best
in rushing.
Right. And against the best teams in the country, he did his best work. So, unbelievable steal.
Look at it this way. I'd much rather have Cody Schrader as an undrafted free agent than bringing back Ezekiel Elliott for one more go around with the Dallas Cowboys. You see that, Larry? You want to talk about your draft stock, and then you signed Ezekiel Elliott? What are you doing, Jerry Jones?
Jerry had a bad draft.
Yes, he
if you
did.
look, Jerry had a bad draft. There
Well,
were
I
some
mean, again,
incredible
we'll find
drafts,
out.
but
We'll all find out. We don't know that now, but
it looks bad.
no
It
one
looks
likes
bad.
it. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
And it just I don't see the meat and potatoes in that draft. But but this guy, Cody Schrader, is going to come to camp. Now they have a bunch of backs. But this guy's going to find a way on the field. He's going to become a favorite, and people are going to love him. I mean, it's just he he's got what it takes. I mean, really, really solid football player who just lacks a little bit of the measurables. I actually think
How about
Cody Schrader will be better than Guerendo as a running back. He's got more natural instincts. Guerendo is a better athlete. Big, strong, fast, special teamer for sure, and maybe a return guy, maybe a fullback, I'm not sure what Guerendo is as a running back, but Schrader is a running back, and he's a damn good one.
If he doesn't make his way onto the week 1 roster, hopefully they can keep him around for a practice squad. And if he's on the practice squad, I bet you he's the first guy picked up off the 49ers practice squad by another team. Like, that's who he might be. So we'll see what Cody Schrader out of Missouri looks like. Again, why are you an undrafted free agent, or why are you a 7th rounder? It's because somebody is underestimating you, underevaluating you. And this brings us to Tatum Bethune, who is the linebacker, the 251st overall, the only 7th round pick that the 49ers walked away from this draft with. They ended up walking away with 8 drafted players. And Tatum Bethune, again, I don't know what his measurables came up, not enough. He played an awful lot of college football. That's what you're looking for. Give me a fucking football player. Maybe his arms are short. Maybe his legs are short. Maybe he doesn't run the fastest time, but you know what? He's a football player. Tatum Bethune, you look at just 5 minutes of tape. That looks like a football player to me. How's that guy a 7th rounder?
Again, well, he's short. I mean, this is where the NFL gets really prehistoric with their way they evaluate things. If you're 6'2", 230, and you play the way Tatum Bethune played at a big school, you're a 5th round pick. If you're 5'11", 227, you go undrafted. And that's really it. He's short. This guy's a short player, but if you watch Florida State, this guy was always around the football. 5'11", 227, 10-inch hands, very quick, very, very productive linebacker. And this is a kid who grew up in Miami. His father played safety at Florida A&M in the early 90s. He started playing football at the age of 5. He went to Miami Central High School, where he was a linebacker and a defensive lineman. He was only a 3-star recruit. Randy Shannon, the former Hurricane, convinced him to go to UCF, Central Florida. So he followed Randy Shannon to Central Florida, and then he played there for 3 years. And then when Shannon left, he left, and he went to Florida State. He followed him to Florida State. The kid's he's an academic all AAC member, graduated with his degree, team captain, team leader, explosive blitzer, 26 quarterback pressures over the past 2 seasons. He's got special teams experience. What he is more than anything, he's a violent hitter. Great effort, great, practice tone setting player, according to the coaches. And, this guy, he processes what he sees fast. So he's moving fast. The one downside is he's not a good form tackler. So he's more of a hitter than a form tackler, but he can cover tight ends. He played the will linebacker in their 4-2-5 scheme, 239 career tackles, 28 tackles for loss, 16 reps on the bench.
The same kind of evaluation Dre Greenlaw has, and I'm not trying to compare this kid to Dre Greenlaw.
No, but it's a good comparison.
Hitter, not a tackler.
Yeah, I mean, and you can get away with it if you're a big enough hitter. I think this guy is, going to be in the mix to compete for a linebacker spot against Demetrius Flanagan Fowles and Curtis Robinson and Jalen Graham and D Winters. And, so obviously Devondre Campbell's got his job set, and Warner's obviously a star. Greenlaw is going to start the year on the pup. So they're looking for guys, and Tatum Bethune is an athlete, Florida State produces a ton of athletes. And I love Kalen DeLoach. He went to Tampa as an undrafted free agent. They played together. DeLoach was even faster, but he's smaller. So, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting guy. I mean, if you're going to take a late round flyer on a guy who people missed out on, you might as well go for the ultra productive linebacker who's super fast. And the reason he's there is because he's 5'11", 227,
and look, let's not forget the 49ers starting point in this draft. And there's a guy here, and I'm not trying to pick on a single person in the chat. His name is Hilo. He says, they'll win about 7 games. I predict they won't make the playoffs. The O-line will fail to protect Purdy. Well, just hold on. Without just ripping them apart here. I guess
they went to the Super Bowl last year.
My question would be, well, what makes you think that? Because they're returning the team that won the NFC minus Eric Armstead. That's really the only significant subtraction that we're really looking at from a team that was just in overtime in the Super Bowl. The offensive line that everyone complains so much about and does need to improve for sure returns every starter. And all that offensive line was good enough to reach a Super Bowl. So it can't be as bad as its worst critics are proclaiming it to be bad. Bad enough to reach a Super Bowl is still a pretty good offensive line. What I also think that they've done is they're returning a team that was in the Super Bowl. They might not have added the player that is now, oh, you're in the room, you're the starter now. But I think that they added competition in all the right places to keep every single on the edge starter very frosty about their position on this team, which is exactly what these guys need. No one coming back resting upon their laurels of the NFC champion, but coming back thinking there's a young kid behind me who's going to push me even harder. This is why I was doing videos saying that the single best offensive lineman this team can pick up is Spencer Burford, taking this offseason seriously as hell and coming in better than ever. It's his 3rd year. And in year 3, the player that you might be should finally reveal itself to us. And again, the year 2 Burford was good enough to be out there. Year 1 Burford, good enough to probably asked to be out there longer than he should have been. I think that you add a guy like Dominic Pooney, who can play everywhere. He is an offensive lineman, a jack of all trades, maybe a master of none, but someone who is going to push everyone except for Trent Williams, who is absolutely entrenched in that left tackle job. But he's going to push everybody, Larry. He could be McKivitz. He could be Burford. He could be Brendel. I think Banks is a starter. He doesn't have anything to worry about from Pooney. But, they only took 1 offensive lineman two, because they got Jarrett Kingston, too, another interior lineman from USC. What made him fall to the 6th round? Because he's big, he's fast, he's a zone blocker. It feels like he's got
short arms.
Short arms. Okay.
That's what made Kingston fall. But I mean, Pooney,
I have never heard more about short arms in any draft than I've heard in just the last 72 hours of watching the draft. I've heard more criticism of arm length than I've ever heard. How many tackles did he let up in 4 years of college? Well, he only surrendered 2 sacks, but he's got short arms. Like they're his arms. They're working for him.
Yeah, I mean, in some positions it doesn't matter. I mean, other positions it matters a lot. If you're an offensive lineman, it typically matters because that's your kind of like, you're keeping people on your extension. So if you lock out, how close are they to you? How much space do you create? Teams want tackles that have 34-inch arms. They want or longer. And this guy's Kingston's arms are a little short. As far as Pooney, I mean, I didn't love the Kingston pick. I got to be honest. I watched him and I was like, I don't see it. But he's obviously athletic and fast. They defer to Chris Forster for their offensive line picks. I saw Forster get on the phone with Pooney, and he's like, "Hey, man, come out here and let's get you better." So, that's the right mindset. I'll be interested to see if Pooney can start over Feliciano or Burford because he is a big, powerful guy for sure. And he looked good in his Kansas tape. So, I mean, there were people that wanted them to go higher with the offensive line. The Steelers had the greatest offensive line draft of all time. They got Fatanu in the round 1. They got Zach Frazier in round 2. They got Mason McCormick later on. I mean, the Steelers they just redid their entire offensive line with awesomeness. So the Steelers are going to run the hell out of the football. But I'm not going to criticize the Niners for their offensive linemen. I we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think Pooney's a good prospect. I think
Zach Frazier should have been. I think Zach Frazier should have been the Ricky Pearsall pick, to be totally honest with you. But
I agree. I agree. But I mean, obviously, and Brendel, I don't think is set because you've got guys who have played inside. The only thing is that only criticism I would say with the Niners is they went through this entire draft. They drafted a couple offensive linemen. I don't think either of them really project as a tackle. Now, Pooney has played some tackle, but he's not thought of to be a tackle. He's thought to be better as a guard. Kingston, I mean, Pooney can play all the spots. He's versatile, but I think he's a guard. And I think Kingston might be a center. So I think they went into this draft. They say they love their tackles and they say they love Jalen Moore, their swing tackle. So maybe they're, they feel better about their tackles than their fans.
Well, look, they didn't give Colton McKivitz a 1-year deal. He's 2. I mean, Colton McKivitz is signed through this year and next season. So they obviously think more of him than, the harshest Colton McKivitz critics you're going to find out in the internet streets. I think, again, I really think that the offensive line that the 49ers lost the Super Bowl with last year, if everybody has themselves a big offseason, they all come back a little bit better, and a little bit better is the only thing you need to be to win a Super Bowl, right? When you're in a Super Bowl and you lose a Super Bowl, just being a little bit better is all you're looking for. And I think a lot of the players that the 49ers are going to be leaning on all next year were not the players that just got drafted this weekend. Again, the team is sort of on the field before any of these guys came into the room. And the single biggest development of the entire draft for the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk still on the team, Deebo Samuel still on the team. I didn't think we were coming out of the draft with that, the way it was starting to lean, especially after the Mike Silver rumors that, Deebo's now in play. Larry, I thought for sure one of those two guys might be off the team. They're not. And that is the biggest, Brandon Ayuk remaining a 49er, pretend that's your draft pick. You're going to like that guy. Trust me.
Yeah, but you can't say you got better. You just say that's status quo. But yeah,
I disagree though, because I think that another year and a full off season with Purdy does make this offense better. Continuity is not status quo since it's so hard to find in this league. I think that they're better returning Ayuk to Purdy for Purdy's 3rd year, just on that alone.
We'll see.
Two of them working out this offseason.
I think he's better. I think he'll be better this year. But overall, are you better? Deebo's a year older. Is he going to play? Kittle's a year older on the wrong side of 30. We'll see. We'll see how they look. I don't. What's interesting to me is look at how many. Usually you keep a combination of 10 receivers or running backs. So maybe you have 5 receivers and 5 running backs, or maybe you have 6 running backs and 4 receivers, or maybe you have, maybe you keep 11 and you go, 6 receivers and 5 running backs. Between Cowing and Pearsall, and now you have your big 3. There's 5 right there, and then you still have Ronnie Bell, Chris Conley, Trent Taylor, Danny Gray. And then running back wise, you add 2 really good running backs, but you still have McCaffrey and Juice and JP Mason and Elijah Mitchell. And it's like I do kind of expect them to either trade one running back or one receiver just because it just seems like it's packed, but we'll see. That's probably a thing for the summer. But yeah, the one interesting thing was that Lynch sat down with us as the media throng last Monday and said, you know what, the line of scrimmage. And then they didn't really do anything on the line of scrimmage. No defensive linemen, though they did pay Evan Anderson from Florida Atlantic a huge amount of money. Obviously they've guaranteed him to almost make the practice squad. And that's interesting because to me, when I watched him, he's huge. He's 6'1", 350 down to 6'1", 330. He's dropped 20 pounds, but he's still a monstrous guy. He did a backflip into his swimming pool in Orlando when he saw that the Niners signed him as an undrafted free agent. But that's all they did on the defensive line was add one undrafted free agent. And all they did on the offensive line was draft two guys, none of them particularly high, neither particularly high. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. It's like they talked up the line. Lynch talked up, hey, we need to get better on the line of scrimmage, and then did very little on the line of scrimmage.
Well, we talked about having conviction to your draft board, right? And, a lot of the players that I think really would have fit the 49ers in either of those categories felt like names went off right before the Niners pick came up, and they chose to not get addressed. It's funny. The one trade up that they made was for the Isaac Guerendo pick, right? Feels like they got aggressive for a position that was not of need, but they must have had him so high up on their draft board that they just said, well, we just can't risk it anymore, and we're going to go get him right now. But again, both centers in this draft, Powers Johnson and Zach Frazier, those could be the players that come back to haunt if either one of those guys turns into like some perennial Pro Bowl center. I think that's going to sting because we forget about just you and me screaming it. It felt like they were screaming it, but then they went in another direction. It just goes to show you that these press conferences really aren't that valuable.
Well, and teams, teams make mistakes. I mean, teams, we'll see. I mean, we'll see if it winds up being a good thing or a bad thing. If Guerendo winds up being some star player, then obviously they know what they're doing. Their track record, though, is horrible, trading up for players, especially offensive skill position players. They traded up for, I think, Dante Pettis. I think they traded up for Joe Williams. They traded up for Jalen Hurd. I mean, they traded up for guys who just gigantic nobodies. So their track record when Kyle falls in love with an offensive player and they move up to get him is pretty well documented, horrible. So we'll see. We'll see what they did. But I would have loved to have seen Frazier. I thought the plan should be, okay, you found that you have your quarterback now in Brock Purdy. Build a freaking wall around Brock Purdy with great offensive linemen. And if you want to add some skill position guys, great. Instead, they added a number of skill position guys and have built no wall. So we'll see if Chris Forster can coach up what he's got or if offensive line is a problem spot for them.
Renardo Green, second-round pick, 64th overall, cornerback out of Florida State. Malik Mustafa, the safety from Wake Forest, 124 fourth-round pick, first pick that they had in the fourth round, are what they did to address their safety help or their secondary needs, along with Rock Yassin being signed as a free agent before we got to the actual draft. I can't put a finger on Malik Mustafa or Renardo Green. I don't know
they're both dogs. I mean, this is where they really kicked ass. I mean, if you want to say where did they really improve, they added two dogs in their secondary. And more than anything, when they lost Emmanuel Mosley and they lost Jimmy Ward, they lost their alphas in the back end. It wasn't just they lost good football players. They lost the leaders. And now they've added these two guys, and these two guys absolutely are phenomenal.
They hit.
I mean, Renardo Green, man, he has been one of my favorite players. Now, many of the draft guides and had him just misgraded, right? They had him in the fifth round, and it was so obvious that he was not a fifth round pick. And the Niners got him in the second round. But if you heard Lynch talk to him on the phone, he's like, man, we've been after you for a while. We've been on you for a while. Renardo Green plays bigger than his size. He hits. He can play the slot inside. He can play the boundary X. He can play, he can play free safety in a pinch. He's got experience at safety. So, I mean, Renardo Green's a dog. I mean, he shut down Neighbors and and Brian Thomas when Florida State played LSU, and just was in their hip pocket, challenging them all day. So he's like one of these guys that just loves to play and will play for fun. And then Malik Mustafa is just, I think, maybe their best pick. I mean, this pick, this is the pick that, Mayoko and others were like, yeah, the Niners are not going to make this pick. And the reason that they didn't think they would make the pick is this is the pick they got from Dallas for Trey Lance. And the theory was, oh, they're so afraid of what Trey Lance could become that they don't want to have this pick be a direct comparison of, well, this is what they got for Trey Lance. But instead of doing that, they went out and got a player who I think is going to make them win that trade.
Well, that's just I don't agree with that logic at all. Like, so the Trey Lance thing has happened. No more comparisons, no more draw, no more. It doesn't matter anymore. I mean, like, I think that's
there's
insane.
A lot of people that feel like, you'll always draw it back to what did you get for Trey, and now it's this one player, and maybe Trey comes of age some
Here's
point.
What you got for Trey, Brock Purdy. That's what you got. That's.
But I mean, this guy's fine. I mean, this is a really good football player. 87.5 run defense grade in 2023. That was 15th among Power 5 conference safeties. He's not the biggest, but he plays big. 5'10", 210, born in Charlotte, North Carolina. Couple things to love about him. He's got experience on special teams as a gunner, but he also has 0 penalties over 4 seasons in college. He had 80 tackles this year. He's just a tackling machine. They clocked him at 23 miles per hour as far as his game speed. This is a guy who tore his ACL in 2021. His run defense PFF grade was 96th percentile. His run stop PFF grade was 95th percentile. His slot coverage PFF grade was 90th percentile. He's a violent hitter. He held opposing quarterbacks to a 32% completion rate. Met with the Niners in Indy, and I love this player. He was a no-star recruit. He was recruited by Richmond, started at Richmond, transferred to Wake, team captain, explosive hitter, unbelievable, smart player, super, super competitive player. This is one of their best picks by far. This guy, Malik Mustafa, he can play the field safety in the cover 3. So, it's like you got a Fonga, he's better in the box. You got Jair, he's better in the box. You needed somebody who could play the field. This guy can play the field.
By the way, we got a proper pronunciation on that. You keep on saying Malik. It's not Malik.
No, it's Malik.
Malik Mustafa. There you go.
Malik Mustafa. Yeah, Malik Mustafa. And Lynch loved him because he's like Lynch. He's super competitive, super smart, super rangy, and a monster hitter. This guy will knock you into next week. So I love this player. As soon as I saw him, I had him in the rest of my mocks, the rest of the draft season leading into draft day. I just thought that safety was a really tough position, Damon, because they had this severe need, right? You only have going into the draft, you have Talanoa Fonga and Jair Brown and George Odom, who's a Pro Bowl special teamer, but he's really a special teamer. After that, you had Taylor Hawkins and Eric Harris, and those guys are like practice squad guys. So you had to get a safety for sure. And then you looked at the field of safeties, and it was like, okay, there's a few good ones. But as far as guys who can, hit and intimidate and cover the deep middle, man, you're talking about like 5 or 6 guys in the entire draft. And for the Niners at 124 in the 4th round to come up with Malik Mustafa, unbelievable. Great pick. Renardo Green and Malik Mustafa give this secondary 2 alphas, one at corner, one at safety, and they both have the ability to play free safety. So you might see Renardo Green at free safety. You might see Mustafa at free safety, but they added, I think, 2 true alphas in their secondary, difference makers, tone setters, and that's always a great thing. That's where, that's where they're the most improved, is the secondary.
What do you think is the biggest difference between a free safety, strong safety?
Well, some teams there is no difference because they play split safeties all the time. But as far as the Niners play, we'll see what they do under Staley. We really don't know, right? But they have historically played a lot of cover three. Cover three is a great defense, and it puts the strong safety in the box like another linebacker. So that strong safety really has to have run stopping capability. And then the free safety then is responsible for, the deep third of the field and a ton of space. So, yeah, the free safety is going to have to be more of a coverage guy. It could be a converted corner, but he's also going to have to make tackles. And the strong safety, in the cover three is literally another backer.
I like the draft. Draft. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think it's like do handstands, backflips until we see some, actual production and how guys fit into this year and then the plans going forward. But, how many actual snaps for this upcoming season did they draft? I don't know. I felt like that was maybe job one. I think that the 49ers might have viewed this differently. I think the 49ers are playing. I thought that this draft was not just 2024 based, but bigger, broader picture. And that's where I think I got an awful lot of what I thought was important to this team wrong. And maybe that's the right thing for them to do, is to always be looking 2-3 years down the road with any draft that you make, and not just chips in the middle all 1 year. I mean, chips in the middle all 1 year really isn't how they behaved at any point during this Kyle Shanahan run. And it just felt like the circumstances of where the team is in its championship window might have changed what they do, who they are. It really didn't. Really didn't. And I get, is that something to be admired, I guess? Like, they're sticking to who they are and who their guns are. And at the same time, they didn't fall into that we only draft defensive linemen sort of rumor that we've always applied to the Niners. So I can't tell if this is doubling down on who they are or changing a little bit of what their draft day strategy really was. It'll all come out in the wash. I know that. When will come out? Isn't that our next big day here? Was it the next big day in the NFL calendar schedule release?
In May, yeah. To me, the big day is when you go down and look at their rookies in the first minicamp face to face, and you can see what they look like against the guys that you have on your roster. Because then you can see, Guerendo was the fastest guy in the entire field, or Malik Mustafa, looked like an alpha running around out there.
He's already better than blankety blank.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's another one. That's a big day. But we've buried one name that I have to talk about, because I went last night and I watched tons of college football, so I've seen a lot of Tanner Mordecai. But you know what? Until you really put that film in, I watched a full game of his, then I watched his highlight reel. I'm a fan. I am absolutely all in on Tanner Mordecai and the Niners. So I don't know who's draft. I mean, if I could sit here and ask John Lynch one question about the draft, I would say, who was it that scouted Purdy again? Who was it that pounded the table? And who pounded the table this year for Tanner Mordecai? Because this guy is real. And I mean, I couldn't believe it when I started watching him, his skill set. But this kid's got an awesome skill set, Damon. He started at Oklahoma, right? He played 3 years at Oklahoma. He was a backup to Kyler Murray, and then he lost the job to Jalen Hurts in 2019. Then he shared the job with Spencer Rattler in 2020. So he played 3 years at Oklahoma and barely played, only got into 12 games with the Sooners. He transfers to SMU in 2021, where his number one receiver is Rashee Rice. All right. And he put up some amazing numbers. First start at SMU, he throws 7 touchdowns against Abilene Christian. Granted, it's Abilene Christian. Then he threw 9 touchdowns in a game in 2022 against the Houston Cougars. Now, granted, it's a crazy offense, but still. Then he transfers this year to Wisconsin, and now he's playing in the Big Ten which is a totally different conference, much better coaching, unbelievable defenses, and he played well for Wisconsin this year. Really well. I mean, 9 touchdowns, 4 picks for Wisconsin this year. But the previous 2 years, he had 33 touchdowns, 10 picks, 34 touchdowns, 12 picks. So he had 2 big years before he came to Wisconsin. 6'1", 210. He runs a 4.46 40. So he's really fast, like way faster than almost every other quarterback. That would have been the second fastest time of any quarterback at the combine. 1.63, 10-yard split. It's not Brock Purdy's 1.54, but it's still damn good. 36.5-inch vertical, which would have been number 2 of all quarterbacks at the combine.
Well, look, it's tough to evaluate Wisconsin quarterbacks because they're such a run-heavy football team. Mordecai is the first Wisconsin quarterback to have a 300 or more yard passing game in 5 years.
Right. They run it, and run it again.
Yeah.
But the kid is a Waco, Texas kid. He was a 4-star high school recruit out of Midway High School. And 20-14 is his college record, 66%, 35 touchdowns, 27 picks. If you look at him, though, he gets the ball out quickly. And he's everything you want as far as a leader. This guy is an authentic leader. He broke his right hand again in the Wisconsin game against Iowa. 3.5 weeks later, he's playing in the bowl game against LSU. Wasn't invited to the
strip sacked on the final play of the game too. It didn't end the way he wanted it to.
No, he was sacked on the final 3 plays of that LSU bowl game.
Yeah.
But against LSU, one of the most talented teams in the country, one of the fastest teams in the country, playing 3 or 4 weeks after he broke his throwing hand, he goes 27 of 40, 68% for 378 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Sacked 5 times. They lose the bowl game 35-31. But I mean, still, you're talking about a guy who is got 4.46 speed. And if you watch him and move around, this guy uses his legs to, keep the chains moving if there's nothing there. And 4.46 is really, really fast for a quarterback. He's got a strong arm. One of the scouts said he had a cannon. I don't know if I saw a cannon, but he's definitely got enough arm. I mean, he has definitely got enough arm. There's no question about that. So he's got enough arm to play. He's got a 4.46 40. He's a leader. He's kind of a fiery competitor. He's tough. He plays hurt. I mean, he looked amazing in the ReliaQuest Bowl. The guy's accurate. He plays with confidence. I'm telling you, man, remember that name, Tanner Mordecai. Yeah, I think what I saw is a guy who definitely has the ability to make this roster. So if you're Brandon Allen, man, buckle that chin strap and be ready for camp because this kid could take your job. And if Josh Dobbs plays the way that I saw Josh Dobbs play against the Bears late in the year, then Mordecai is going to be the number 2 quarterback.
Who's the last Wisconsin quarterback to start an NFL game? It's a good question, isn't it?
I would say the Niners had a Wisconsin quarterback in camp a few years ago, and I forget his name, but Russell Wilson.
Well, Russell Wilson, sure. Again, NC State.
Yeah, but he finished at Wisconsin, right?
He did. He got drafted out of Wisconsin. Russell Wilson. There you go. Look, if Tanner Mordecai ever takes
Mordecai, just remember that name.
I'll be surprised. I'm
telling you, Damon, this guy's real. He's got a real arm. He's got real size. He's got, the toughness is real. The competitor is real. I even saw him do some interviews, and he's got what you want, right? He's got that Brock Purdy. He's tough, but he's smart, but he's humble. I don't know who's scouting quarterbacks for the Niners this year. I really don't, or the last few years. But they obviously hit on Brock Purdy, and I'm telling you, this guy is going to make it. I mean, this guy,
I
based
think
on what I saw, I was like, I could not believe the way this guy looked when I started watching him. I mean, it's, the speed and the courageousness. This guy will take off in the middle of the field and where there's defenders everywhere and run and cut and set up blocks and double back. And I mean, you don't see that many quarterbacks who can run 4.4 who are 6'1", 215. And I don't know if I saw a cannon, but he definitely has a good enough arm to play.
Look, I mean, probably
got a better arm than Purdy.
He did more collegiately than Trey Lance did, right? So
yeah, I mean, this guy, he, and if you look at him, you sit there and you go, well, wait a second, how could everybody miss on Tanner Mordecai if the guy played all this college football? But he really didn't play at Oklahoma. But, the fact is, there are several people along the route here that have thought this guy was a good player. I mean, a 4-star high school recruit, there's only 5 stars. So this was a heavily recruited high school athlete. And Oklahoma gets all the quarterbacks they want, right? I mean, you name it. They've probably been quarterback you the most in the last few years. And they add him to a group that already had Kyler and Hurts and Rattler. And so he never really plays. Then he goes to SMU and just in that crazy offense just lights it up. But, it's like, who are you really going against? Then he goes to, and he played 3 years at Oklahoma, 2 years at SMU, and only 1 year at Wisconsin. And obviously Wisconsin, the Big Ten is, way better coaching, way better defenses. But man, he was impressive. And I'm checking all these boxes. And I'm like, all right, is this guy big enough? Yeah. Is he athletic enough? Yeah. Does he have enough arm strength? Yeah. And then you start looking at it and you're like, wait a second. This guy's a leader. This guy's tough.
Oh, by the way,
fiery.
Scott Tolzien, your 49er backup.
Scott Tolzien.
Luke Walsh there. Very nice. Well done.
A lot of people thought really highly of Scott Tolzien, by the way. But this guy is absolutely legit.
I'm going to just Larry, I love your enthusiasm. You get very excited about players.
I'm very excited about Tanner Mordecai.
I'm going to recommend a huge hold on any purchase of any Mordecai jerseys. That's the way I would go. I'll tell you the one in the Big Ten that I think I'm excited about is Drake Nugent. I mean, basically, Harbaugh got most of his Michigan team drafted. The guy who had starting as a center wasn't one of them. The Niners did pick him up, Drake Nugent out of Michigan.
Yeah, Stanford guy who transferred to Michigan, and he's got size. He's just slow. Like Michael Hall just absolutely wrecked shop on him in the Ohio State Michigan game. I mean, he just could not stay in front of Michael Hall. But as far as an undrafted center, who's got some, smarts and some experience and, you could do worse. I think he is a practice squad guy at best, maybe a camp body, but no question. I mean, he's interesting.
Well, like and subscribe. It is good to have you here. Wake Up now coming to you 3 days a week, starting at 8:45 Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And Larry, again, coming out of the draft, everyone tries to put their grades down and who you think did well, or what person you think is going to pop when he gets to the NFL. Just looking at the rest of the league, I think it's easy to walk away saying the Steelers got a lot better up front. That's a good draft when you focus on and kind of nail your offensive line across the board. I think the Eagles had a good draft. I think the Bears had an interesting draft. I think the Arizona Cardinals had a hell of a first round.
Rams, Cardinals, and Seahawks all did well. Did well.
And they got better up front where the Niners, I don't want to say didn't, because I do think that they're going to be better up front, but everyone in the NFC West was thinking beef in this draft. And for the first time, it didn't feel like the Niners were following that as the mandate.
No, the Niners went for, they added speed and dynamic playmaking. I mean, that's what Cowing to me is tremendous addition. He's a hard guy to defend. And you just added a really tough little player to Debo, Ayuk, McCaffrey, Kittle. So I think Cowing is
how does he get on the field? I mean, that's my question. How is he going to get on the field based on the way the Niners play?
Maybe they'll go more 4 wide. Maybe they'll put him in there for Jennings from time to time. Maybe there's also, the Niners said they're not going to move any of their players, but there were people that speculated that they may trade Debo after June 1st. I don't know. I mean, this definitely gives them the opportunity to do that if they wanted to, because they have enough depth now. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I mean, it's amazing. I mean, they have the competition in camp at the backup for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I mean, there's going to be some really good competition on the offensive side of the ball. Now, the question is, they lost Eric Armstead. They brought in, Leonard Floyd, and they brought in Yatir Gross-Matos and Jordan Elliott and Malik Collins. Is that going to be a net gain or a net loss? Are they better on the defensive line than they were? I think they are better, because I think all the guys that they signed are good players for the most part. And Leonard Floyd, I think, is a real difference maker. I think he's way better than what they've had. But, that's kind of a question. Are they better on the defensive line?
I also just think it was the right time to cut bait with Armstead based on his injuries, the production and the pay. It was the right time to walk away from that. So I do think they got better up front.
I think they got better on the defensive line too. I mean, to me, Floyd is a real difference maker. Now, can you spot him? Can you spot him enough so you can keep him fresh and play him on third downs and not play him on early downs? That's kind of the question. The big question is what's Jordan Elliott and Malik Collins going to give you in the, on your defensive tackle spot? Who can step in for Dre Greenlaw? Can you stop the run? But, you had 2 alphas in your secondary that I think are going to play. That to me is the biggest improvement. And then Cowing offensively, I think, is going to be just a game changer. I mean, they haven't had a guy like this. I mean, think about it. 49ers have not had a 4-3 great route runner in a long time.
If Cowing's on the field, Ricky Pearsall stinks, right? I mean,
not necessarily.
How does Cowing get on the field with Ricky Pearsall getting on the field? You can't have both, right? I mean, it just feels like
they're gonna play. They're complementary type players. I mean, Ayuk's your number 1 receiver. Debo's your number 2. But then
number 3.
Juwan Jennings is number 3. But until Juwan Jennings is slow. And so now if you're going up against a team and Juwan Jennings is too slow to get open, you throw Cowing out there, you throw Pearsall out there. I mean, I think Pearsall is going to be one of those guys that Niner fans hate until game day. And then it's going to be like, oh my God, thank God we have Pearsall, because Pearsall is real. He's an incredible route runner. He's got great hands. He's very quick. He rises up and makes plays in the air. So, I mean, I think Pearsall is going to be that guy that everybody's covered, and then Brock Purdy moves 5 feet and finds Pearsall. And at the end of the day, people are like, God dang it, that Pearsall, opposing teams are going to be like, damn it, that Pearsall burned us all day. He kept drives alive. So
there's a guy in the chat named James Thomas who says, this ain't 1990, Damon. Go look at the receiving core throughout the league. You need more than 2.5 wideouts. Kyle doesn't. There are so few 3 wide receiver sets that the Niners run that, you need more than 2.5 wideouts. Sure, I know that you need that, but Kyle doesn't play that. Unless they
ran a lot of 2 tight ends down the stretch.
Yeah, unless
there's no Charlie Warner anymore.
A radical reinvention of how this offense looks. 4 wide receiver, the near unheard of 5 wide receiver sets, and even with a 5 wide receiver set, I'm guessing one of those receivers is Kittle, and another one of those receivers is Christian McCaffrey. So again, I think that the 49ers use their forget thinking. I can prove to you mathematically that the 49ers use fewer wide receiver snaps than just about any other team in football. and they throw less than any other team in football. And the fourth or fifth wide receiver is officially Danny Gray, to the point where you don't even see him in an entire football season.
Well, he's not been healthy.
I know, but
I will say this. They added some time. I mean, for a very good offense, they added Schrader and Guerendo, Cowing and Pearsall and Pline. And all those guys, I think, can be contributing players in their offense. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I love Pline as a receiver. I love Schrader. I mean, I think he's just fantastic. But Cowing is the guy that I think makes the instant impact along with Pearsall. And I don't know how they're going to use their receivers. Yeah, I mean, it definitely gives them depth at receiver. I mean, Chris Conley played well for them. Right now, he's cut. There's no way Chris Conley makes this team. I mean, right now. Ronnie Bell looked good last year. I don't see Ronnie Bell making this team. Danny Gray was a third-round pick. Unless Danny Gray gets it rolling real quick, Jacob Cowing is going to be here and take his job. The one thing I love about Cowing, he's kind of like Danny Gray, but way tougher. So it's like he's going to play, where Danny Gray couldn't get on the field, and then when he did get on the field, he couldn't stay on the field. So it was interesting. I mean, I didn't expect them to add as many weapons as they did, but like when you add speed like Cowing and Guerendo, how are they going to utilize that speed? I think it could be really exciting. And then how much of these, guys were drafted with the idea of maybe playing in those new return rules? Is Guerendo going to be a return man for you? Is Cowing going to be a return man for you? But
Cody Schrader.
Cody Schrader. I mean, I can't wait to see Cody Schrader. I mean, Cody Schrader is a really, really good football player. And he did it in the biggest conference in America, and he still went undrafted. I thought, okay, they were talking him up late in the year in the All-Star games, and I'm like, okay, this kid's going to go in like the fourth round because they're talking him up, and he probably should go in the fifth. And instead, he goes undrafted, and he's there at the end of the draft for anybody to have. I mean, really pretty amazing story. The question is, are they going to get burned because they didn't do anything on the D-line in the draft? Are they going to get burned because they didn't do a whole lot on the offensive line? There's no first round pick or second round pick in the offensive line. I don't know. I'm not really sure how what to expect on the line of scrimmage, but if they're solid on the line of scrimmage, man, they sure are a lot more dynamic on the back end with Mustafa and Green in the secondary, and they're a lot more dynamic with the receivers and running backs they just added.
There are a handful of 49ers fans that are chapped that Jerry Rice's kid didn't make the team as an undrafted free agent. But hey,
he got drafted. The Chargers drafted him, but he got passed over the most of almost any player this weekend, and I don't get it. I do not get it. Okay,
but
he's a Charger.
Owens, you got Terrell Owens' kid as an undrafted free agent. So there you go.
And I saw him. He's interesting in that he is just the rawest of raw players you've ever seen. I mean, he didn't play high school ball until his sophomore year. He said he didn't really get serious about high school football until his senior year of high school. I mean, you got kids playing ball when they're 5 years old, and this guy didn't play till he was almost 20 or whatever. So that's interesting. But I mean, man, to have those genes, he's 6'2", 210, and he's pretty rocked up, and he looks pretty good in the uniform. I saw him at the Niners local pro
right
day.
Now.
I saw him in the Niners local pro day, and I mean, he's not going to make the team.
Right.
But he could be a practice squad guy that develops because he's got Terrell's, genes, and he's big and fast and raw, but big and fast. I don't know exactly what he ran 40 time wise, but you're talking about a pretty good sized receiver, and he looks a lot like T.O. when he's running. So, he's not going to make the team, but he could be a practice squad guy, and it could be really interesting.
Good draft weekend when it's all said and done. Obviously, the NFL is, double pumping its victory lap about all the attention that the draft created. I heard Detroit had the biggest group of people to ever show up and attend a draft. It feels like these things are just growing exponentially every year. There's like 20%, 30% growth in terms of people going to the draft, attending it.
It's become big.
It's bigger than I ever thought it would be. I mean, honestly, who would have
It was
ever
a conference call. It was a conference call when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then it was on Saturdays. The whole thing was Saturday. Now it's like Thursday night in prime time, and the NFL Network's got a show called Path to the Draft for like 6 weeks where they just sit there and talk about the draft every single night. It's become its own little it's the Super Bowl of the off season. And I'll say this, it is the most popular sport in America, the NFL, far and away the most popular sport. And anything attached to the NFL is going to be enormously popular. The draft is the bloodline to the sport.
Well, and
there's almost no such thing as being good without being good in the draft.
It's the mesh point between America's most popular sport and probably America's second most popular sport, professional college football. So here we go.
Shanahan had an interesting comment yesterday that I thought was worth discussing. He said that he felt, maybe it was not from yesterday, whenever they spoke, that he feels that he would like that free agency is in March and the draft's in April. He said he'd like it if the draft were in March and free agency was in April. He would like the draft to be before free agency.
Yeah,
I think the owners
are never going to allow that, right?
Well, I don't know, because I was thinking maybe the players union might go for that, because then it's like there's more of an urgency to signing these players. Now what happens is free agency's in March, most of the players get signed. Then there's then all of a sudden all the lower tier players don't get signed because people are like, well, we'll see what we can get in the draft. And now there's like a second tier free agency that starts right now that goes for the next 3 or 4 weeks, where the lesser players wind up going and signing. So I don't know. I was thinking of it the other way. I was thinking, well, if you have the draft first, then there's more urgency to the free agency market. And maybe that's something the agents and the players union would be all about.
I mean, I don't know. I think it kind of works the other way where, okay, so your season's over. Now, here we go. Your first step in improving from what you saw last year is by going out and spending money on a high-priced veteran. Like, that's what makes all boats in the harbor rise in terms of salaries. So if you're the players union, you want desperate and dumb money being thrown around before prudent draft decisions might shut off the spigot of desperate and dumb money. So
if you move the draft in front of free agency this year, would the Falcons have signed Kirk Cousins to the $100 million contract?
No, but again, desperate and dumb is what the NFL wants, and the Falcons fit both of those.
I think they made a smart move in drafting Michael Penix, but I'm on record as saying that I think Penix is better than Caleb. So I think Penix is the best quarterback in the draft, and they got him, 8 overall. But man, there were an awful lot of people ripping that whole selection. And the only thing I'll say that I don't get is that they signed Cousins, and they have an out after 2 years. But from what I heard, and I didn't read the article, but I saw the headline that the Falcons say that Michael Penix may sit for 4 years. If he sits for 4 years, that is categorically a stupid decision. You drafted a quarterback, when you have no cap room going forward because you've got Kirk Cousins and everything that went with that. So you can't really improve your football team, and you drafted Penix, and you're not going to play him until he's 28. He's already 24. If he sits for 4 years, he's not getting out there until he's like 28 or 29. That's ridiculous.
It can't. Look,
that can't happen.
Not only are you doing wrong by Penix, retarding the beginning of his career, you've also totally undercut Kirk Cousins and denied him a weapon when you're ready to win the NFC South right now. Like, the Falcons, the Falcons always step on their own dicks, and they did with this pick. They're not going to start their rook. They're going to they've invested too much money in a quarterback who's never really delivered in prime time as it is. He's
what
good.
if Penix outplays him in the preseason?
Then whoever decided to bring in Kirk Cousins needs to be fired.
Yeah. But it is quarterback in the NFL, so you kind of wonder. It's like, will it all work? As long as Cousins plays well and Penix plays well, in some ways they'll be fine, right? Because there'll always be somebody who they could offload Cousins to, if they wanted to. I can't picture them moving Penix, but I just think also Atlanta. You've been in Atlanta. My daughter's going to school there now. It's dog country. It's college football through and through. I mean, Georgia Tech. There's more interest in Georgia Tech than there is in the Falcons.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. They might outrank Georgia Tech, but the actual Georgia Bulldogs, yeah, they're number
dogs
one.
Are like, that's
it's the most important team in the state.
Easily. So they're kind of battling to sell tickets there, and I wonder if Penix, they look at Penix as kind of like that. I mean, I'll say this. I mean, they looked excited. Their room looked excited. And once this kid, and if I'm right, and Penix is the best quarterback in the draft, they look pretty good getting him at 8. And I think I'm right. I think he is the best quarterback in the draft.
If he can stay healthy, he's got ridiculous arm talent. There is no doubt.
He was good. He made Indiana look good.
Oh, the apex of Indiana's modern football was 2000. I don't know who did more to help Indiana have a successful year, Michael Penix or COVID. It was a little bit of a combination of both, Larry. It really was. So, what do we got? We got a few super chats, Larry. Let's check out.
I'll pull them up. You read them because I'm still not seeing very clearly.
I got the wrong context phase of your life. There we go. David Isaac. He's become a member. Thank you very much, David, for the support and all the love, and we appreciate it. We're going to golf clap any membership. That's the way we go. Raziki says Harbaugh says he views offensive line as weapons. San Francisco trading with Kansas City so they could draft a starting offensive lineman's a head scratcher. Is San Francisco banking on Christian McCaffrey and Trent being injury free? I don't get it.
That there were a lot of people who didn't like the fact that the Niners moved the pick that became Xavier Worthy. But I mean, if you really look at Brock Purdy, Xavier Worthy runs go patterns on the sideline, and he is going to create a great dynamic element for the Chiefs. There's no doubt he's their new Tyreek Hill. But the Niners wanted a player who could make plays in the middle of the field because that's where Brock Purdy, operates in the short and intermediate middle. And so all I would say is if it's 3rd and 7 and, you can have Xavier Worthy running off the coverage. Okay. But you're still probably going to one of these other guys. In Pearsall, I think that's a guy who's going to be able to actually make catches and, be that continuity piece and keep the chains moving. So different receivers. But obviously the Niners decided that they, what they wanted before they made that trade.
This is from Kyle Benz, who says, can't believe the 49ers could have had Powers Johnson. They get a receiver that looks to me like he might not take Kyle seriously. That makes me not take Kyle seriously. Look,
he and Powers Johnson, I think, went to the Raiders. He, is the center there. Guard,
the whole point is it really worth typing into the word? I don't take Kyle Shanahan seriously. Here's the 3 greatest coaches in the history of the San Francisco 49ers. Bill Walsh, George Seifert, Kyle Shanahan. That's already the list. He's already the 3rd greatest coach in the history of the fucking franchise. And if it's still not good enough for you, it's time to get a new team. If you are not on Team Shanahan, you need to stop rooting for the San Francisco 49ers because this dude is not going anywhere. I mean, it's like saying, I love swimming. I love swimming. I love swimming. I hate the fucking water, but I love swimming.
I mean, there's this groundswell of content creator led people that are, crapping on Shanahan. It's like, dude, reassess. I mean, You've been in the NFC Championship game, what, 4 times in the last 5 years? You've been to multiple Super Bowls. Has he not done enough to get it done? Yeah. But did you forget Chip Kelly? Did you forget Jim Tomsula? Did you forget Dennis Erickson? Did you forget Mike Singletary? I want winners. He's never coached again. Do you forget Mike Nolan? I mean, come on. Seriously, you're going to bitch and complain that Shanahan is bad when the Niners, I mean, you just said it. I mean, there's Walsh, there's Seifert, there's Shanahan, and most people would put Shanahan over Seifert. Seifert went 1-15 with Carolina at the end. He's a really good defensive backfield coach who inherited the greatest collection of talent ever seen and won a Super Bowl with it. He was a really, really good defensive coach, but I would say it's Walsh and then Shanahan, 1-2. But I mean, I understand it. I understand the frustration with Shanahan when you lose the Super Bowl that you thought you should have won.
Right.
When he makes some questionable decisions. I'm not saying that he's not above reproach or you can't criticize, but to be like Shanahan's the problem, you sound like an idiot. I mean, I hate to say it. You say, and it makes no sense. It's like it's the same people that are walking around going, "Goddamn Steve Kerr, man, Kerr sucks," and they've had like 5 parades or whatever. It's like, and the guy and 5 teams in the league and 4 college teams would all fire their coach immediately if Kerr was out there, and there'd be a bidding war for his services. And the same thing would happen with Shanahan if the Niners cut him loose tomorrow, there'd be like 3 other NFL head coaches immediately dispatched.
Right.
And there would be like 4 college jobs, premier college jobs, where the ADs would offer him like a blank check. And, I mean, come on. I mean, it's all, I get it. They haven't gotten it done yet. And he's had problems in the biggest games. But come on, you're still talking about one of, I don't know. I mean, who's the best head coach in the NFL? Andy Reid. Who's second? John Harbaugh, maybe Sean McVay. I don't know who else you like, but
right.
I mean, Shanahan's right there. He's right there.
Look at it this way. If it is Sean McVay, Shanahan owns that dude.
Yeah.
So,
except McVay's got a Super Bowl ring. And
he does have a Super Bowl ring. But look, some guys saying this guy loves silver medals. I remember when you used to not even be on the platform. I mean, that's the thing. I
mean, do we want to go back and rehash? I actually did the pre and post game shows for the Chip Kelly era. John Lund and I would sit there 100 yards for Reuben Drones, 100 yards rushing for Jacquizz Rodgers, 100 yards rushing for Belial Powell, 100 yards. I mean, they gave up 7 consecutive 100-yard rushers. There was nothing innovative about Chip Kelly. He ran bad plays at a breakneck pace. That's it. I mean, I'm not saying it's either or, but I'm just saying don't forget where you were just because you haven't achieved your ultimate goal. Don't forget where you were when this guy took over. The roster was in shambles. They were winning nothing. It was a disaster. And now they've been to 4 NFC Championship games in the last 5 years. They've been to a couple Super Bowls. Yes, is it time to push through? Yeah. But if you're running out Shanahan today, you're no different than the idiot Eagle fans that were running out Andy Reid, saying that he couldn't win the big one. And then now suddenly he goes to Kansas City, he's won 3. So much for he couldn't win the big one. So it hasn't happened yet. So some of these people have license to bitch, but I mean, seriously, think about it. Just think about it. And here's the other thing too. It's like a kitchen remodel. Anybody can go into your kitchen and take a sledgehammer to your Formica. It takes a contractor to actually plan how to build it back up. So anybody can sit there and swing a sledgehammer at Kyle Shanahan and say, he sucks, he's this, he's that. Great. Who do you want to replace him with? Let's talk about it.
Right.
And until then, shut the fuck up. I mean, seriously, shut the fuck up. If you have somebody better, then bring it to the table. Otherwise, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I told Tom, I told Tate, I told everybody, just shut the fuck up, Kyle Shanahan. He might not have won a Super Bowl, but this guy, he puts an awful lot in the Miata trunk and brings an awful lot to the table more days than he leaves things at home. So just calm down. I know Art Spander once did find his backpack at a Super Bowl and he had his playbook, and that wasn't a very good look. But, you can trust Art Spander. He's not going to sink the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a coach as good as Kyle Shanahan when I was in San Francisco. Instead I get guys who are, who's got it better than us, and he's warring with the owner. And then I've got Chip Kelly, and I've got, I'm sitting there with guys who are talking fast and delivering nothing.
By the way, couldn't help but noticing that Trent Baalke drafted an even number of ACLs this year. He did not come away with this draft with an odd number of ACLs. He always, he likes a 10-man draft class with 9 or 7 ACLs usually. So it's nice to see him, erring on the side of complete formed knees.
Every time they showed their war room on draft day during the draft weekend, there was Trent and there was Peterson, and they were not talking.
And Peterson was always he had those glasses that only like your grandfather has, the glasses that come, they snap apart in the middle, and you bring them down and then you put them together and you click them in the middle. It's like right. It's like instead of having a bra where the clip is in the back, the clip is in the front. And I think Peterson's a better coach than he is evaluator of eyewear. I'll give him that much.
They both were wearing glasses.
Daryl Granville. Hi guys. Damn. I hope Pline works out. Yeah. Mason Pline, the tight end from
Mason Pline. Yeah. I'm telling you, man, I've been on that guy for a couple months now, as far as a prospect goes. And it didn't bother me that they didn't get a tight end. I'm like, maybe they'll get my guy as an undrafted free agent. And sure enough, they did. I love Mason Pline, man. I love those characteristics, because he's going to give you a big target who's smart and has great hands and has big time ball skills and athleticism. At 6'8", they don't have a 6'8" tight end. They worked one out on local pro day, but they didn't sign him. I got to be honest. Braden Willis, nice guy. Cam Latu, nice guy. They got some guy named Jake Tongues from Cal. They've got Eric Sobert. None of those guys, in my mind, can really play at any real high level. I think Pline can beat these guys up.
Did you see the Detroit Lions war room, by the way? The Detroit Lions war room were all wearing Brock Wright jerseys.
Yeah, no, but that's not Brock Wright jerseys. So they were honoring Dan Campbell. That's Dan Campbell's number.
Oh, a lot of people that was?
Yeah, that was not a gigantic Brock Wright thing. Brock Wright's a relative nobody in the whole grand scheme of things. Though that was the entire room wearing Dan Campbell's number.
Oh, I thought that they were taking a little shot at
yeah. At people suggested that. No, it was about Dan. It was about honoring the great Dan Campbell.
Hey, why wouldn't you? He's the single. Dan Campbell is already the single greatest coach in Detroit Lion football history, right? I mean, it's what, Wayne Fontenot and him, maybe, right?
Wayne Fonts, yeah. No, it's well, they had Monty Clark, who was a pretty good coach for sure, and probably some other guys going back, but
Steve Mariucci. Oh no, never mind.
Marty Morningweg. Definitely one of the great coaches. And Detroit, they're doing it again, man. The Detroit's coming. They need secondary help. They get Terrion Arnold, and they also drafted my boy Sione Vaki. So, and they had somebody else as well. They got another corner as well.
If you have one ass cheek and 3 toes, I will beat your ass.
Detroit is coming. Detroit is absolutely coming.
Come on, Deese. Deese nuts.
Gotta love Dan Campbell. This is from Blood Moon, dropping a 5 spot on us, saying Conley, old, gray, wasted opportunities, and Bell have shown with that a little time given has shown his ceiling. There's no other level Bell has in him to show.
Could be true.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I like Ronnie Bell. He's very experienced. He's very skilled.
Yeah. I'm not a believer that in 2 years you have revealed everything we need to know about you athletically. Like that, I don't believe that.
Especially receivers. I mean, not in 2 years, 1 year. He was a rookie last year.
Right.
So, I mean, this is year 2. I mean, the one thing about Ronnie Bell is he catches that sideline pass better than any of the other Niner receivers, as far as he does it in practice every day where he catches it and toe taps on the sideline. His dad coaches wide receivers in college, so he was pretty advanced, but he's not a high-end athlete. I mean, he's a smaller guy without big speed. So, I mean, if you're going to be a smaller guy, you want to be, a guy that has big time speed. He doesn't have big time speed.
Or you have to have the surest hands in the world, which unfortunately on punt return hasn't exactly gone in that direction.
Right. Exactly. If you're going to make your hay, you got to do it on special teams, and he hasn't been able to do it.
Oli Ko. 49ers added speed, depth, future starters. Haters,
I mean, people can criticize all they want, and who knows? Maybe they'll be right. I mean,
here's the thing:
it's a crapshoot deal. I mean, it's the draft. I mean, I'll say this: the Niners did not go. What did they have? 8 picks or whatever. They did not go 8 for 8. Okay, They didn't go 0 for 8, but they didn't go 8 for 8. Somebody that they picked is going to be a bust. There's a failure rate in these things, but I think overall, I love Renardo Green, love Malik Mustafa, love Jacob Cowing. And I told you I really love some of those late undrafted guys as well.
Well, and again, placing your winning tickets on middle rounds, later rounds, producing more than the 49ers in early rounds has been a good place to place your bets. That's kind of the way it's worked out during the Lynch Shanahan era. They've had some huge swings and misses early in the draft, and then have absolutely filled their cupboard with Pro Bowl level talent in rounds 3 through 6. And by the way, they got a franchise quarterback with the last pick of the draft too. So they got
Pearsall will not be a swing and a miss. He might be a low end guy that's just a complimentary piece. And then, I'm with everybody else. Hey, you know what? You're investing a first round draft choice in a complimentary receiver. But when you look at what he does and you look at who you have at quarterback, I think there's a chance that Pearsall could have some very, very prolific numbers at times playing with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy plays in the middle of the field. The ball comes out with accuracy and it comes out on time. This guy operates in the middle of the field with exceptional ball skills and an uncanny group of hands. I mean, I'll say this too. I mean, if you think about it, the fans and the media have ripped the Pearsall, draft, that selection, but the players, I mean, I don't know if you saw
players and coaches.
One scout told Guerendo is an anonymous scout, said that he thinks that Pearsall could catch 100 balls this year. So that's amazing. And then you saw the Texans quarterback CJ Stroud.
I mean, here's the thing.
Man, that guy's good.
Would anyone Niner wide receiver have a chance to catch 100 balls? Like Brandon Ayuk's not going to catch 100 balls.
I know, but I think what they're saying though is that
unless they change the way that they play,
or if they, I mean, based on what I've seen of their talent, I would say they're going to go. I mean, they went 2 tight ends an awful lot down the stretch, and are they going to keep going 2 tight ends? It doesn't seem like it. Seems like they're going to go a lot more 3 wides. But we'll see. We'll see. You just never know.
Run the ball, Kyle. Again, Kyle needs a run the ball coach. With the running back picks from this draft, does Kyle still run Christian McCaffrey into the ground again this year and probably get him hurt? He barely made it through the playoffs.
I would say no.
I think that's one of the main notes that Kyle has to take away from last year. Less Christian McCaffrey regular season, more Christian McCaffrey in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, just use your whole arsenal of players. Stop. I mean, my biggest complaint is not his usage of McCaffrey. My biggest complaint was his usage of Greenlaw. You drafted Jalen Graham. He looked like an absolute house on fire in the preseason. You drafted D. Winters. You had other guys, and you just kept putting Greenlaw out there because he wanted to play. Well, you got to the Super Bowl and he wasn't there. And to me, you may have lost the Super Bowl because you didn't have Greenlaw. So I want to see them, take better care of their best, most essential players. I mean, I told everybody I knew from November on, hey, you know what? This team's not winning the Super Bowl if Dre Greenlaw's not healthy. And sure enough, he wasn't healthy on Super Bowl Sunday and they lost. So, I mean, it's just.
And look, there's no load management in the NFL, but snap management to guys who touch the ball an awful lot, I think is something that the 49ers do need to focus on this year.
When you get up by 2 touchdowns in the second half, put in somebody else. I mean, and you only have 3 or 4 essential players. Get your essential players off the field better, faster, and hopefully they'll have more left late in the year. That would be my thought. I mean, to me, it was awful that they didn't have Greenlaw, and McCaffrey could have been fresher. And you have J.P. Mason, who looked really fresh at the end of the year. He just never got any touches, and Elijah Mitchell didn't hardly get any touches. And it does make you wonder. It's like, why are you going after Schrader and Guerendo and Cowing and Pearsall if you don't have any real time for them, and you're not planning on using them? We'll see. The plan's got to be to use those guys this year, at least a couple of them.
Well, and again, that's why it didn't make sense to me when that pick came up. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to see Rook Ororo. It would have been nice to see Zach Frazier. Would have been nice to see Michael Hall. It would have been nice to get one more big-time guy on the line of scrimmage, either at center or at defensive tackle, and instead they went with Pearsall. I like Pearsall. I think he's going to be really effective. I think with Purdy, he could be scary, dangerous. But to me, is he ever going to be your true number one receiver, or is he going to be more of an effective complementary receiver? And also, the one thing I didn't like about the Pearsall pick is I didn't like, for a guy who has that kind of ball skills. Now, granted, Florida had terrible quarterbacks, but his college production is not incredible for a guy who has that kind of ball skills. So, yeah, he's a great route runner. He makes some amazing catches. He'll probably be a perfect fit with Purdy, but the college production to me didn't warrant that high of a selection.
And by the way, if he doesn't change the way that he plays a little bit, especially going across the middle, he'll be hospitalized by week 4.
Yeah, he's going to get starched. But if he, but at the same time, he plays a very courageous game. I mean, the guy definitely, if he takes a big pop and coughs up the ball, I'm going to be really, really like, oh man, your first round draft choice is this possession, middle of the field receiver who takes a big pop and can't hold on. To me, that's my big question about him is, can he take the big hit in the NFL and hold on to the ball?
Or at least don't fumble on the opening drive of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Ricky Williams, who becomes an all-pro first out of this draft, might not be one. Let's be totally honest. Might not be one. How about this? Let's predict who even makes it in the league before we try to guess who the all-pro might be.
All-pro? Yeah, that's hard. I would probably say Malik Mustafa.
We got to wrap up, Larry. I got a show that's starting in about 20 minutes here. So.
We got 2 more supers, and then we'll jet.
Kyle Ben's correction. I take Kyle seriously as a good coach, but I'm looking song trust with his decisions to win it, like drafting a slot wide receiver over the best center in the draft. But Kyle is a top 3 coach.
There you go.
Hey, this is something that we have returned to several times, that Kyle might be better served with a general manager who's making decisions independently from him. But, he and Lynch have a pretty good track record at the same time.
That's a good point, though. Maybe he should just coach the GD team, not be, so prevalent in the draft deal. But he's making the money, right? He's making the $5 million a year. It's his name's atop the masthead.
He's making a lot more than $5 million a year.
What's that?
He's making a lot more than $5 million a year, isn't he?
Is he? I don't know. I thought he was making $5-6 million a year.
Great show, guys. Brian Baldinger says Pearsall's a bigger, faster Julian Edelman. What are your thoughts? Well, I think we always compare Caucasian wide receivers to another Caucasian wide receiver for our comps. So I don't know, but
Julian Edelman was rarely tough though. This kid, it's all going to come down. We know this kid can run routes. We know this kid has hands. We know this kid, makes some amazing plays. It's all going to come down to toughness. If he's Julian Edelman tough, it's going to be a hell of a pick. If he's not, it's not.
If he's catching all those passes in the Super Bowl, then it's going to be great. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a Super Bowl MVP. Then, but I understand what Baldy's saying. It makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Look, and I trust Brian Baldinger's ability to spot an NFL player from a mile away more than I trust other people's chances of spotting an NFL player while they're standing on top of them. So Baldy's great at what he does.
I've always said Baldy is a guy who's a football guy.
A football guy.
He's kind of like me. He's not like you, Damon or Lowry. You guys are media guys. You talk. Baldy's a football guy with fingers that are mangled, and he's really played the game. You know what I'm saying?
I like a guy who's torn his ACL in his pinky, and clearly he's got no ACL or meniscus left in that pinky. Brian Baldinger can be pointing directly at you and someone else at the same time. I like a two-way pointer, and I'm done. There you go. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on Wednesday at 8:45.
Get yourself an meat cheese. And I've always said, even though Baldy is a football guy, I'm not a football guy. Tom, he's not a football guy. Tate's not a football guy. We're riding around the Miata. We're talking big. We feel we're lots of confidence. Get your meat cheese.